It's nearly 6 months now since we looked at that wonderful yew tree at Tullynisk, when it was covered with hundreds of thousands of flowers, all of which only has stamens, because the Tullynisk yew is a male tree. And then we visited a female tree in Clonoghill Cemetery, which was particularly appropriate if we are correct in thinking that Clonoghill in Irish is Clonoghill, the pasture of the yew wood. But there are few places where yew is more prominent than here in Birr Castle Domain. And indeed, you may remember we concluded our earlier yew visit by looking at the wonderful staircase in the castle itself, made of yew timber from the great wood of Birr, in which a 17th century visitor to the castle tells us there was at that time much plenty of the tree. Back in May, we saw that each female flower of yew consists of a single ovule that doesn't have the protection of an enclosing ovary. It was wrapped in nothing more than a few overlapping scales, with a sticky little opening at the top to intercept any pollen that might be carried here on the wind. But look what happens after fertilization. There's the ovule, which is now the seed. But look at what is growing up around it, looking at this stage like a green egg in an egg cup. By October, however, the egg cup swallows the egg and suddenly becomes fleshy and red and full of sweet mucilage. The main function of this pulpy red coat is to attract birds like thrushes and blackbirds that will disperse the seeds, which pass unharmed through their digestive system, ending up perhaps a long way from where the fruit was eaten. The seeds usually take a few years to germinate and grow very slowly at first, 2 or 3 inches a year at most, but with a taproot that can descend twice as far. It is one of the few trees that can thrive under deep shade, even of beech. The red part of the fruit is the only part that's edible. The rest of the tree is highly poisonous, although goats seem able to develop a tolerance for small amounts. And poisonous though it is, yew contains a chemical called taxol, only discovered in the bark of Pacific yew less than 60 years ago. This is now on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines and is used to treat a wide variety of cancers, some of which up to its discovery carried a death sentence. There is a very particular association between yew and old cemeteries. Now, it used to be thought that this was because in the Middle Ages English archers needed yew for the longbows which gave them supremacy in battle before the invention of firearms. Graveyards were just about the only places that yew could be grown out of reach of browsing animals within the enclosure. But in actual fact, the longbow was made from imported yew, because native yew doesn't have the necessary tensile strength. But this association between yew and cemeteries or other hallowed places goes way back before the invention of the longbow, and it has a particularly Irish connection to it. One of the most striking things about the voluminous lives of the early Irish saints is how many of them had a particular reverence or relationship with individual ancient trees, mainly oak and yew. And this is thought to be an early Irish tradition that had its roots in the religious ethos of a much earlier Ireland. The yew tree that we see in most cemeteries, which has a dense growth habit and erect rather than spreading branches, is a particular natural variety that originated in the mountains of Fermanagh in the late 19th century and can only be propagated by cuttings. Here we see it growing beside the common form of the tree in Clonoghill Cemetery. The great yew at Tullynisk is several centuries old, perhaps as old as this fabulous oak tree that grows right beside it. But the yew has a long life ahead of it because it can live to 1,000 years and perhaps for several centuries after that. In an earlier Ireland, yew was thought to be the oldest of all living things, and There's a wonderful passage in the Irish tradition that compares the ages of different things in the landscape, in which yew is described as the oldest of all living creatures. Let me read it for you in Irish first of all. Trí cúlifáil cú, trí cú ac, trí ac dinne, trí dinne uller, trí uller bradán, trí bradán yuir, trí yuir etra, trí etracha ó hús an dawen godera an dawen. The lives of 3 wattles. Wattles were hurdles placed in a hedge to fill a gap. The lives of 3 wattles equal the life of a hound. The lives of 3 hounds equal the life of a horse. The lives of 3 horses equal the life of a person. The lives of 3 persons equal the life of an eagle. The lives of 3 eagles equal the life of a salmon. The lives of 3 salmon equal the life of a yew tree. The lives of 3 yew trees is as long as the duration of a ridge on the land. The duration of 3 ridges is all the time from the beginning of the world to its end.